Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me today is a phenomenal woman that I've had the pleasure of knowing for a number of years now. She's my sister in Christ. We both attend church together. She is a counselor. She is a mother, but most importantly, she's a woman of God, and she's taken time out of her very busy schedule to hang out with us for a little while with the hopes of sharing a little bit of her journey, her story, with the hopes of encouraging, inspiring, and uplifting others, particularly as it deals with the subject matter of adversity and how to properly address those situations in our lives, as we all, of course, go through our series of storms. So it is my privilege and honor, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce to you this phenomenal woman. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Ricci Criner. Ricci, thank you so much for being on the show.
Hello. Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So before we get started with our segments for this evening, I do want to give you an opportunity to share a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, what you do, kind of give our audience a taste of who is Ricci Criner.
Okay. So I am definitely a country girl. I grew up in East Texas. I was born in Dallas, but I grew up in East Texas. I mean, cows and horses and cow tipping. That is my jam. I'm used to mudding. I'm a country girl. Um, I was born to a mom at 15 years old. So I've had a very interesting journey. It's it's brought me through a lot. Through a lot. And so I am very happy to be here so I can share some of those things, some wisdom and some tidbits, and look forward to blessing someone with exactly like you said, encouragement. So
Absolutely.
I mainly grew up in the house with my grandparents. I was able to just soak up their wisdom and love, and they nurtured me, and I am who I am because of who they were to me and for me.
Awesome,
Yeah.
awesome, awesome. Well, with that said, thank you, of course, for that intro. But with that said, we're going to jump right into our segments. And I want to kind of build upon what you just
Okay.
started speaking to, if you will, because when it comes to telling our stories, our journeys of life, I'm a firm believer in the fact that in order to truly capture the essence of one story, it's always important that you go back to the beginnings of where it all
Absolutely.
starts. And
Yeah.
so that's exactly what we're going to do right now. If you would kind of take us back, East Texas, young country girl, if you will, and kind of share a little bit more about what was it like for you growing up, including fond memories that you have about growing up, as well as if there was any challenges that come to mind along the way that you'd like to share, kind of giving us the foundational basis of where your story begins.
Absolutely. So being born to young parents, it was very difficult in the beginning. You know, they married and it was not the best situation. So around 12 is when I moved to East Texas. We moved in with my grandparents when my parents divorced. And that's kind of where my journey began. That's where I came to life. I was in a situation where I had structure, where I had foundation, where more than anything, I was brought to Jesus Christ. I was finally in a situation where I could be a kid, and it was amazing. I flourished. I wasn't doing so well in school when I got there, but my grandmother made sure I went to summer school. She got me back on track. I began to live the life of a country girl, and it's just what I needed. I needed that structure, that guidance. Um, and a little bit of discipline, not very much. I was the only child. As I said, my mom and I were just 14 years apart. So my mom was adopted. So my grandmother kind of would joke with me. It's like she got two for one, not making light of the situation, but embracing it, even in its adversity. Kind of what your
Wow.
show is about. Yeah, just embracing the fact that, hey, I got two babies for the price of one. I did pretty well. So, growing up in the country, being there, a couple of years later, my mom uh, got into her addiction. And so during my teen years, my dad was absent. He was doing his thing, and my mom was in her addiction. So it was really difficult for me to try to maneuver a new place, maneuver just being a teenager and having the absence of my mom and my dad. It was rough. So what kept me going? Mabel Smith. That was my grandmother. That is my grand. Everything that you see before you is because of her.
Hmm.
Uh, the emotion.
Okay.
Yeah. She was an amazing woman. She loved God, and she made sure that I had a relationship, not just the rituals, the things that we do, but a relationship that I intimately knew him as my Lord and Savior. And we did all the country girl things. My mom eventually did get herself together. And because if you will remember in the 80s, that's when crack cocaine was like dropped into our communities, and it just grew like wildfire. All of my friends' parents were addicted. All of my grandparents' friends, their children were addicted. It was just really bad. So as I became an older teenager, I decided to on a path of wanting to help. I wasn't quite sure how I was going to help, but I wanted to be in a helping profession. So I eventually graduated from Trinity Valley in Athens. Go Cardinals. And then I went to East Texas State at the time. It's now Texas A&M in Commerce. Went to East Texas State. My parents were like, just go to college. It doesn't matter what you do. Just go. So I did. I went, and my major was business, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it. It was horrible. But got there, had a little too much fun, brother, like we do in college. And I found myself with a challenge, And it was hard. I had never been in the situation that I had found myself in before. It was the first time that, the decade of the 20s is about transitioning. We're transitioning from childhood to adulthood. We are learning how to become adults, how to make those decisions. And that's a good thing for the decade of the 20s. The only downside is we make choices and decisions that set us on the path that affect the rest of our lives. And I absolutely did that at that point.
Mm, mm. Wow, wow. Well, first off, I appreciate your transparency and sharing what you have so far. You know, it's like you said, it's never easy when you're coming up under teen parents, if you will. I totally identify with you in the sense of being an only child,
Yes.
born to a teen mom
Yes.
as well, and and the navigating of that, and then for you to have a teen mom who's having her own challenges as well. I get when you say it was for lack of a better word, it was difficult. Mom not being actively around, dad not being actively around at that time, and but what's beautiful about your story that you shared so far is when you spoke about your grandmother, and I
Yes.
could clearly see and hear your love and your thoughts of your grandmother and the impact that she had on your life. There's just something special about grandmothers. If for my listeners, if you've ever had that grandmother, that
Ooh,
whatever you called her, grandmother, grandma, mima, whatever it
nanny.
was you called her,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know, there's just something special about that
Absolutely.
bond, that relationship, and so I'm thankful that you had that opportunity to not only be in good relationship with your grandmother, but to be nurtured by her, specifically as it pertained to you having a relationship with God. And
Absolutely.
and I love the fact that you said, it wasn't just about the routine, where a lot sometimes when people talk about, coming up in church or whatever, it was sometimes we speak of that, but it's more about the motions of, yeah, I had to go to church every Sunday, or I had to attend Bible study, I had to do this. But you didn't speak of it in that regard. You spoke of it like she helped foster the relationship with God. And it was because of that that allowed you to be able to even process and deal with a lot of the challenges that you were having to go through early on in life. As you
Absolutely.
said, so and again, I'm just thankful that you had that that connection, that relationship in your life with your grandmother, and her connecting you with God, and how it opened up the opportunity, as you stated, to just be a kid,
Yeah.
and kind of do kid like things, because it's never easy if you're a child but feeling like you got the weight of adult like pressures or things of that nature to deal with. So Very, very touching story. And then just the whole life of being in the country. I mean, I didn't grow up in the country. I grew up in the city. But when I've talked to people who have had similar lifestyles like that, like I said, growing up in the country, they always seem to have very
Uh,
interesting, enjoyable stories. Like, it was almost like the simplicity of life
yeah,
just felt rich, even if you didn't have a lot of money, even if you didn't
right.
have a lot of whatever. It was just a certain freedom and a love that came with that. So I'm always interested in hearing stories like that, and wondering, man, that seems like to be a pretty cool, cool upbringing, if you
It
will.
absolutely was. And in addition to my relationship with God, both my grandmother and my grandfather were entrepreneurs.
Mm,
And so I was able to have a front row seat and be put on the track of, hey, you are able and capable of building from scratch. You absolutely work for other people. There is no shame or harm in that, but you have the blessings of Abraham upon you. You are able to be your own boss and create your own things. My grandfather was the first African American plumber, licensed master level plumber in Henderson, Texas.
mm,
And my grandmother she had a child care center. So I grew up at their feet watching them
mm.
be entrepreneurs. And so as I grew and became, now I find myself doing the same thing and hopefully putting my kids on the same track. It's a
Mhm.
legacy for my family.
That's awesome. That is
Yeah.
awesome to hear. And like you said, I mean, you and I are pretty close in age, and so it's
Mhm.
like I think back to those years, and I oftentimes have conversations with people who have had similar experiences, and that's one of the things that we've talked about being able to see us in particular have businesses of all different types, of all different scopes, if you will. And it just kind of is a reminder when we did, I think we kind of took it for granted a little bit back then, but
Yes.
as you get older and you reflect back on that, you're like, well, if they could do it and they didn't have nowhere near the means or the resources that we have today, why isn't why is it that we can't
Yes.
follow those same pathways? I mean, and it wasn't, again, it wasn't like elaborate businesses necessarily per se. You
Right.
could you might have known somebody who owned a little convenience store, a shoe shine repair store, a barber shop, or a small restaurant. I mean, it was just, but it was theirs. It, like you
Mhm.
said, and it built an opportunity for a legacy to be established, and the skill sets and the encouragement, if you will, of letting you know that don't worry about what you have or what you don't have. Just understand that God has gifted you with skill sets and talents and gifts that
Yeah.
if you allow him to tap into those things and reveal them to you, you're capable of doing anything, and being successful in life, and not feeling like your choices are restricted or limited in some kind of way, just because, in your case, just because I grew up as a country girl, or just because I,
Absolutely.
I grew up in a single parent household, or just
Mhm.
because of this, circumstance or that circumstance. Because even with all of those things that you've shared so far, when I think about what you do today, it now, and I'm sure you've probably had reflective moments on this, it's like, it's now starting to piece together and make sense why I do what I do now, and why I had to go through what I've
What?
gone through in order to be relatable and effective in what I do
Absolutely.
today.
Yes. And it took me a while, this big age of present, to understand how when he says it all works together for the good, he means everything. He means every single thing. So even that degree that I obtained that I didn't really want and found it difficult to get, it started the building block for where I am now. And I could not imagine how I would ever use it. And now I fall back on that so hard these days. The
Wow.
business aspect and building this company, it's a lot. And had I not had that training and that education, I really don't think I'd be able to do it.
Mm, mm. Beautiful, beautiful. So, as we're moving through, of course, your journey in life, obviously it transitions into adulthood, and as you said, you get into that age of the 20s. And I was just literally a couple of days ago having a conversation with somebody about how that 20s
Yes.
period of time is for many of us, that age of discovery, that age of kind of figuring stuff out and trying to make sense of it all and on all
Mhm.
of those type of things. But as we know, in addition to those things, as we enter into adulthood, if you will, there's going to be, along with those experiences, there's going to be a series of storms that begin to develop.
Absolutely.
And it seems like as the older you get, sometimes the more intense that these storms get, sometimes to the degree that you might have questions in some instances, how am I going to get through this particular moment or this particular challenge in time? So, with that said, if you would, tell us about a time when you found yourself in the midst of a storm, a life storm, a challenge of adversity, if you will, that you had questions, you had doubts as to how am I going to get through this? Even if you're normally really good at navigating through challenging times, every now and then, even the best of us get hit
Right.
with something that, okay,
Absolutely.
this is even a bit much for me. This is something that I don't have a quick answer to, that I can't throw some money at, that I can't make a phone call on to make this go away. I'm really at an impasse, and I'm questioning and I'm doubting, and I got fears and I got anxieties and all of those other negative energies that are going on. So
Mhm.
if you would, tell us about a time that you felt that way, and what was ultimately the turning point, if you would, where you began to see some light at the end of the tunnel and coming out of that particular situation.
So as I said, I went to college. My family scraped together everything they had. They sent me to East Texas State. I went the first semester. It was great. Came home for the summer and then went back for my semester 2 of junior year and found out I was pregnant.
Mm.
And so I was thrown for a loop. I don't know why I was thrown for a loop. At looking back on it, it's just insanity of how we play fast and loose with our future. And these are Christian people. I grew up in a Christian household. I knew all the rights and the wrongs, and I still had that happen.
Mm.
So I called my mom, and her first response was to come home. I want you to come home. And so I got home and told my grandmother, and she said, well, of course, there's no sin in the baby, only in what you did. So now here we are. You're going to
Mm.
have a baby. That's just what that is. And I wanted to have a baby. Decided to do that. I just remember distinctly going back to school. And of course, I had a church at home at school while I was there. And I went to church one Sunday, and I was standing there after the sanctuary was empty. And I was just praying, asking God for direction and guidance. And I don't know, brother, for some reason my biggest fear was I wouldn't be able to feed the child. I wouldn't be able
Mm.
to provide food. I don't know where that came from. I have yet to today to figure out why that was my anxiety. But I so distinctly hear him saying, if you have this baby, you guys will not be hungry.
Mm.
Have the baby. Have the baby. And so I went home and I had a baby. I had a boy. A lot of your listeners would know the boy. Yes. And so I just remember it was a low point for me, though. I felt like I had disappointed my family. I felt like I had disappointed God. I had this big challenge now that I had to figure out, uneducated, without a job, how I was going to make it now, not only for myself, but now for my little one. And that was rough. When I tell you, I think, in all honesty, those were some really dark times for me because I was 22. I was very young. I didn't know a lot about the world and worldly things because I had been sheltered being the only child. Only kid. You don't, I'm going to tell you how sheltered I was. The first time I ever swept a floor was when I made it to that dorm room. And my roommate was like, what are you doing? I said, I'm sweeping. She's like, you're not even holding the broom correctly. That is how my childhood was. It just sheltered. So I was really scared. I had the Lord to call upon, but I hadn't tuned my ear to really be able to hear him like I can today. And I was scared. I was absolutely scared. But I had Dejan and um, stayed at home for a year and then decided, okay, it's time to get back on the horse. So I packed myself and him up and moved us back to Commerce, to family housing. And I completed my degree in 2000, my general business degree. So my grandmother uh, did not get to see me finish that. My grandfather did, so that was a blessing. My grandmother passed 1 month on June 24th after Dejan was born. She got
Mm,
to hold him one time and see him. So I had a lot of transitions going on that year. And I don't know, this always comes back to my remembrance. It's also the year Tupac died. Like I found out I was pregnant one day, and then that Saturday Tupac was killed.
mm.
It's the things
Right.
we remember. Yeah. So it was hard, but I did. I was able to finish that first bachelor's degree and accomplish that task.
Mm. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Um, Again, appreciate your transparency and sharing what you shared. And just really the takeaway from all of this is just, not underestimating the power of God. Like you said,
Absolutely.
here you were focusing on of all the things to worry about getting pregnant while you're in the midst of getting your college education. You were wondering, how am I going to feed this child? And
Yes.
to your own testimony, you're saying, I don't even know why to this day that was the concern, But again, it's I mean, in that at that age and in our flesh, we, it's natural for you to have felt that way again. But in your growth, in your
Yes.
relationship with Christ, you eventually learn over time. You know what? I was worried about all the wrong things
Ooh.
because at the end of the day, despite this being an unexpected event that you didn't necessarily, anticipate being in that situation,
Mhm.
God had never left you. He had
And
never abandoned you. He was always there, and He hadn't brought you that far in life for all of it just to suddenly blow up in your face simply because of the fact that you now had a child on the way. And He was going to make sure that you were provided for, the child was going to be provided for, and everything was going to work out okay.
yeah.
So it's I guess it's a lesson that I want my viewers to understand is that we're gonna all get hit with storms. I mean, there's just things that are going to happen, and sometimes, in all honesty, we might have some as we reflect on it, we might say, if I would have only made this decision, or if I would only been mindful of that decision, maybe this doesn't happen. Maybe something different pops up. Well, we can go through all of that all day long, but at the end of the day, we know that God doesn't make any mistakes, and if He
Absolutely.
allowed for the situation to take place in this case, there was a purpose in it. There was something that you were supposed to get out of that
Yeah.
experience, to grow, to develop, to be a better version of yourself, to bring you closer to Him.
And indeed.
And while He didn't promise that it would be an easy go, like you said, you had to take a year off. You had to ultimately decide to go back, and
Mhm.
even though you had housing and everything, I'm sure navigating trying to go to class and
Oh,
study and still have basically a 1 year old
yes.
in the mix, that couldn't be easy to juggle. But nevertheless, God made a way for you to be able to do so and overcome it, overcome the challenge, because again, He was always there all along. And that makes me just go back to the relationship with your grandmother and just kind of imparting in you early on, with you not even understanding how important at that time that lesson, that pouring into you was going to be with what was lying ahead, in
Absolutely.
life. So
And it was kind of beautiful because as he was coming into my life, she was transitioning out.
mhm.
And I remember so distinctly because she passed at home with all of us around. And I remember standing on the porch holding him, thinking, wow, my life will never be the same. But I distinctly also remember hearing, but I got you. I got you. I got
Mm,
you. I got you. And it just, when I look back on how good he is to me and has always been, I am grateful. I am grateful. And I can see the beauty in her passing at the
mhm.
time that she did, right as Dejan was coming into my life. And I needed that. And his purpose was to straighten me out. I needed to calm myself down and focus.
Mm.
And becoming his mom did that for me.
Wow.
It did that for me. That boy, I tell him all the time, he changed my whole direction in nothing but a positive way. I
Hmm.
needed it. Yeah.
Wow. And that's so interesting that you bring that up, because it makes me reflect back, and I've shared this story a number of times with people, when I think about the passing of my own mom, and how I often have referred to it as not only is it at one end, it's the most devastating thing that I've ever experienced, but
Yeah.
at the other end of it, it's one of the biggest blessings that I ever could have had, because it was like, as you just spoke about with your grandmother, there was a transitional moment. I was supposed to now be entering into a new phase of my life, and the person who had gotten me up to this point, who had poured
Yeah.
into me, had completed the assignment, if you
Come
will.
on.
It was
Yeah.
time for them to transition out. They had done their part, so it wasn't about, even though in the flesh it hurt to see them go.
Hmm.
When you kind of got through the emotional moment of it all, and you kind of sat back and thought, you're like, you know what? I have everything to be thankful for what they did for me, because they prepared me. They helped to position me to be ready for this. Again, never promising that life would be easy, smooth sailing, problem free, or anything like that. But as the years go by and you think back to the memories of your grandmother, I think back to
Hmm.
memories of my mom or even my grandmother, and you think about
Yeah.
those lessons, and you're like, man, I'm so thankful that they did what they did. And it was time for them to go, because if anything, and I used to say, and I've said this about my mom, it was necessary for God to take her, because I was I was using her as a crutch, if you will. You talked about being sheltered. That was your
Yes.
crutch.
That was my crutch.
And God is saying, I got some stuff for you, and it's going to require you to come unsheltered.
Yes.
It's going to require you, Joe, to come from up under your mama
Yeah.
and start to live life, not only just live life for purposes of experiences or whatever, but I got purpose for you. And so
Absolutely.
it's time for you to fly. It's time for
Yeah.
you to, as you said, get back on the horse. It's time for me to move forward. That
Yep.
doesn't mean that we forget about them. We still think about them probably every day. If you're
Hmm.
like me, you think about them every day, and all the lessons and the good times and all of that stuff. But that's just the beauty of God, how he just intertwines key people in our lives, key lessons that are learned, and even the storms. And I've been saying this over and over, not only to my guests, but to myself. Is you start to look at the storms as not necessarily as a negative event, but an opportunity for to prepare you for what's next, a blessing that lies ahead, whether it's a blessing that's going to be directly for you, or if
Hmm.
it's going to be a blessing that God is positioning you to be able to bestow upon somebody else. So
And it
you
shows
yeah.
too how it all works together for the
Mhm.
good. You
Yes.
know, it even made my grandmother's passing made my mom step up. So
Hmm.
now she is the matriarch of the family. She is the one that everyone is looking to carry and go forth. And so she had to step up. And so all of that worked together for our good. Didn't feel good.
No,
It was very difficult, but it was for our good.
it's for the good. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. So it's just so awesome when, like I said, when you think about these things and piece it all together. And like I said, and sometimes I know for me, sometimes I sit back and be like, what took you so long to figure this thing out? But
Mhm.
hey, God's timing is God's timing, and and everything that he does, it doesn't always make sense to us. We don't have all a grip of understanding about it all, but that's what makes him God. I mean, he
Mhm.
doesn't do things the way we do things. He doesn't. His ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts. But one thing that we can rest assured is that his promises are rock solid, and that and everything that he does is done in perfection and accuracy. So there's no flaw. There's no mistake in it. There's no oops
Yep.
to it. It's exactly the way that it was supposed to be, and it went exactly the way that it was supposed to go. And our job is to operate in obedience and faith, and just continue to hold firm to him, and just watch what he does. And if you're anything like me, every time that I've done that, it's always gone well. Every time that I've strayed and tried to go solo and do my
Yep.
own thing, then that's when, mess ups happen, or that's when things take
It doesn't
way
turn.
longer than what they had to, because
Yeah.
I got off track,
Mm.
so
Yeah.
that's just how it is. So
It
great
is.
stuff. Great
Yeah.
stuff. So, Ricky, when you find yourself dealing with adversity, I mean, I know you've shared some very heavy stuff, but again, as we all know, all storms are not, these torrential storms. Sometimes they're big and major. Sometimes they're just day to day lifing type stuff. But
Absolutely.
nevertheless, when you find yourself facing moments of adversity and challenges in life, what I'm curious to know from you is, what is your process, your routine, if you will, that you like to follow that kind of works best for you in dealing with moments in adversity, where you're able to kind of, again, keep a level head while at the
Mhm.
same time processing and working through such situations? How do you like to do it?
Well, first thing I do is fall all out. I'm an only child to my heart. And when I tell you I sit in the floor and have whole tantrums, I sit in the floor and have whole tantrums. Shout out to Allison, my best friend. We have a phrase. I'll call her and say, okay, I need you to sit in the floor with me. And she's the only child and a therapist, so she get it. And we sit in the floor and have a fit. So then after I have collected myself, of course I go to God in prayer. I really try my best to remember to pray about everything. When he say, you know, acknowledge him in all of the things, in everything, acknowledge him. And he'll tell you which way to go. I really try my best, brother, to stick to that because I need guidance. I need direction, especially now that I am the matriarch of my family. People are looking to me as I looked to my mom and as I looked to my grandmother. They're looking to me. And that's a burden. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. So I make sure that I look to God and ask him which is the best, most direct way to get where I'm supposed to be. As far as adversity, as I've gotten older, I've just realized this. I love the term you use, lifing. That's what it does. There's nothing new under the sun. Life is going to life. Things are going to happen. They're not going to always go your way. It's not always going to be sunshine and roses and pleasant, but this too shall pass. This too shall pass. All through the Bible, it says it came to pass. That lets you know it doesn't stay this way always. You just hold tight and it'll change. My grandmother used to say all the time, give time a chance. Give time a chance. And it took me, yes, give time a chance. So did I. Didn't quite understand it until I got to this big age. But then she would couple that with her scripture. I was once young and now I'm old, and I've never seen the righteous forsaken or their seed beg bread. It's amazing how that is what I heard growing up. And maybe now I'm putting it together with you. Maybe that's why that was my my anxiety about Dejan being able to feed him. But anyway, that's what I heard growing up. Give time a chance, and he's going to always provide. So when I'm facing adversity, I allow myself those moments to be uncertain. I allow myself those moments of humanity, to be human, to realize, okay, I'm rolling around in the floor, only child, having a moment. And then when I'm done doing that, I pick myself up and remember who I am, and I am a child of the Most High. Yeah. And then I surround myself by good people. I have 2 best friends, 2, and they are amazing women of God. I have a daughter that is growing into the most amazing young lady, and she is one of my biggest cheerleaders. So I surround myself with people that I trust and that I can be my authentic self with, and who share the love of God. I surround myself with them. My process. So anytime that we are talking about how to accomplish a task, there is always a process. And I think that I just remember everything starts with a thought. Bible says, so is a man thinketh he is. And so it's so important that I control my thoughts, bring them captive, because we can do that. We're going to have intrusive thoughts. You're going to have negative thoughts all day long. But my word tells me I can bring those captive, and it's important to do that because what we're thinking leads to how we feel. And that, as humans, is where we get tripped up, our emotions. Our emotions, we can't be led by them. You cannot be led by them because they change. They're fleeting. So I try my best to make sure that I am on purpose, thinking what God said to think. And then that in turn will dictate how I'm feeling. And then I make sure that I'm aware of those and I can speak to my feelings so I can cast down the ones that are not appropriate. Yeah.
Wow. I love that. And I think the thing that stands out to me in what you were just saying, I'm thinking about the feelings, I'm thinking about the emotion. So the first thing that I like, which is something that I speak to all the time myself, is it's okay for particularly in the moments of adversity, it's okay for you to be human and express how you feel about it. So if I feel like crying about it, then cry. If you feel
Mhm.
like, screaming out in the air about it, scream. If you got to punch something or whatever you got to do to get it off your chest, to get it out your system. Because what's challenging, and a lot of times this happens with men, where we hold in
Come
our
on.
emotions
Yeah,
because you ain't a man when you express yourself. As if
absolutely.
men don't go through challenging times, or even, like I said, even with women sometimes, especially if you're a woman who's had to do life on your own. Let's just say I'm a single parent.
Absolutely.
I'm paying all the bills. I'm doing this. I'm standing on my own, if you will.
And walking
Sometimes
in your
when
masculine energy.
yeah,
Women have to, every time that we are on a job or being a single parent, doing those things, we're walking in our masculine energy. And that is not how it's supposed to be. That's
mm,
why we're so exhausted. But when
that
we're
part.
able to walk in our feminine energy as women, when we're able to just come in, kick off our shoes, feel safe, and walk in our feminine energy, that's when I think the glory of God in our lives really comes through. And then
Hmm.
for men, men are my most favorite population because heavy is the head that wears the crown. You guys have so many expectations from God. He holds
Hmm.
you guys accountable way more than he holds us accountable. So when I'm coming in with my men, the first thing I work on them with are their feelings. Because whether we like it or not, brother, we make emotional decisions. And, we're not supposed to. We all know we're not supposed, but a lot of the decisions that we make are based on how we feel. Well, if I can't speak to my feelings in a time of adversity, then the decisions I make are going to be atrocious. But if
Hmm.
I can identify, hey, I'm having this feeling, so I need to make sure that the decision that I'm making, because our emotions lead to our decisions and our choices, which leads to our actions.
Right.
Yes, which leads to our habits and our character and our destination. It's a whole process. So as long as I'm identifying what I feel, I can make sure I'm not making those negative emotional decisions.
Uh, exactly, and I love that. It's like, again, you want to have permission, and in an unapologetic way to express your emotions, to express how you
Mhm.
feel. But then after you've had that moment, as you said, after I've had my temper tantrum
Come
or
on.
whatever that is for you,
Yes.
then I gotta put my emotions in check
Mm-hmm.
so that I'm not leading, like I said, haphazardly. That I'm not just running off of my fleshly moment, but now I'm able to have a clear mind, open and willing to receive, and as we've been talking about that relationship with God, open to receive what he has to say to me, as to, this is how you need to process this, Ricky. This is Joe. This is what you need to do to navigate through this. And sometimes the message might just simply be, sit still. I got it. Sometimes it's just that. I'm saying sometimes, oftentimes it's just that. I don't
Yes.
need you to even do anything.
Yes.
What you need to do is just sit. You
Yes.
know, I'll
Sitting.
let you know if there's something else that you need to do, but
You talk.
actually, I'm gonna take this one.
Mm-hmm.
You just sit. You just
Yes.
sit still, and as you said, when you talked about earlier about what your grandmother said about time, you know,
Yes.
be
You better
patient with
take
the time, because sometimes when he tells us to sit, it feels good that we don't have to do anything, but we
Mm-hmm.
want to rush the clock. Well,
Oh,
can
yes.
God, can you hurry this up? Can you move this
Come on.
along?
Come on.
I've been guilty of that many times, but
Absolutely.
but
Well,
when I
Joe,
have, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I want to tell you so fast forward a little bit. My daughter was 4 and my mom was still alive and she was making lunch for her. So my daughter was dancing around in the kitchen. I'm hungry, I'm hungry. And so my mom said, go sit over there and be patient. And so I guess Kiri's face, she didn't understand patient. And so I heard my mom give the best definition for patience I've ever heard. And I still use it to this day. She said, being patient means being happy while you wait.
Mm,
So
I like
essentially,
that.
she told her to go over there and sit down and be happy while you wait. And it matters how we are handling our adversity. It matters how we're waiting. It matters that we're being patient. It matters that you're giving time a chance. Go sit down and be happy while you wait. Go be patient. Yes.
Love that. Love
Yeah.
that. And I don't know if you paid attention to the title of our show for this evening, but it directly connects to what you said. Because when we don't allow that patience to kick in, when we don't allow God's time to work things out, when we when we allow ourselves to get too emotionally charged and misdirected in that regard, what ends up happening, and these were your words, you said, we get exhausted. We get
Yes,
exhausted. We
absolutely.
wear ourselves out.
Hmm.
But even in the midst of that, you said that when we don't allow ourselves to run ragged, if you will, with our emotions, when we put those things in check and we wait in patience, when we allow time to take its time that it needs to take,
Yep.
then it opens up the opportunity for God to take us from that feeling of exhaustion, if you will, to exalt us to where He wants us to be, to what He's trying to do for us, and thus the title of our show, is from
Hmm.
exhausted to exalted. And it's
Yes.
interesting, even as I come up with titles for my shows, a lot of times, it's something that God pours in me to come up with, and then when the stories come out, and
It's
it's just
edifying.
amazing how many times it just confirms that this is
Hmm.
this is what we're talking about to my listeners. This is what we're talking about. We want to transition you from that feeling of exhausted to allowing God to exalt you, to pour into you as only He can.
It's
This is
beautiful.
the whole essence of what it means when we're dealing with this adversities of life and storms of life. They can exhaust you.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
sometimes we add to that exhaustion. I mean, it was already a tough storm, and then we double down on it because we allowed ourselves to just lose sight, lose focus, to get distracted and caught up on the things that didn't even matter. You
Be
know,
emotional,
being
mainly.
emotional. you
Yes.
know, either
Yes.
being emotional or refusing to express the
Ex-
emotion. So we're
Absolutely.
exhausted because we're holding inside
Yep.
something that needs to come out.
Hmm.
That we need to get up out of us so that we can now replace that with what God has to replace that with.
Yes.
So it's just interesting that as you're sharing this, and I'm looking at the title and being reminded of that, and just the connection of it all, it just totally makes sense with what you're saying. And again, all the things as we've been talking all along and hearing your journey and hearing your story, I can't help but to reflect to what you do today and the work that you do and how you process the work
Mm.
that you do. It's all a building process. It's all stepping stones to what you do today and how you're able to execute and do so effectively.
Mm.
So
Very
yeah,
much.
good
Yeah,
stuff. Good stuff.
it absolutely is. And so,
So
oh,
I'm
go
sorry, go
ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and to add to that, going on down the journey, I wanted to go back and work on my master's, but I didn't have the GPA because, as I said, the first degree was hard. So I got a bachelor's in education, which again works together for his good. I'm thinking, I don't want a classroom. I will never teach. And I teach every day,
Mm,
not in the way that I was educated to do it, but in the way that he would have me to do it.
mm,
And then I went on to get my master's in counseling. It just so beautifully fit together now that I look back on it. But as I was going through it, oh, I was having all kind of fits. Just a fit. I just did not understand.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's how it works. The things that we tend to try to avoid or steer away from the most are the very things that God wants us to embrace and take on. The things that, or like you stated, we'll get something, whether it's a degree or whether it's a work experience or whatever, and it may not, we might be just doing it just to pay the bills, or we might just be
Right.
doing it to,
Yes.
to say that we're, having some kind of activity in our life, not really understanding the underlying purpose. I mean, even in my line of work, and as long as I've been doing it, for the longest time, I had in my mind that all the things that I did in my day to day working of a job were for one reason. But
Mm-hmm.
the older I get and the closer I get to God, I begin to understand, wait a
Hmm.
minute, as He's
Yeah.
revealed more and more of what the purpose of in life. And you start to think, and sometimes especially when you're in an entrepreneurial mode or mindset, sometimes you think as if you're like starting from scratch to
Oh,
start a business or to start an entrepreneurial journey. And what
yeah.
you soon discover is that it may be the beginning in terms of you officially, let's just say, coming up with your business name and your business plan and all of that. But the actual work, the actual teaching, the actual educational piece of it, you've been doing this thing all
Oh,
along. You
come
just didn't
on.
make the connection. You had just been doing it for somebody else. And
Yes.
now God is saying, I need you to do it independently from, do it instead of working for others. I need you to work for me now.
Uh-huh.
And and this is how I want to set you up to work for me,
Yeah.
so that I can get the glory for what you do, instead of you trying to seek the glory or the acknowledgement from the quote unquote workplace, hoping that they acknowledge your efforts by giving you, you know, a title, or hoping that they acknowledge your efforts by giving you a bonus, or
Mm-hmm.
saying great work, Ricky,
Mm-hmm.
or giving you a plaque of some sort. Of
Right.
He said, no. I mean, nothing wrong with what you did, but that was all a training ground. That was never where I intended for you to stay permanently. I never intended it. You might have had in your mind that this is where you were going to stay until you got 65
Retired.
years old, had a retirement party, get the gold watch or whatever, and ride off into the sunset. I never intended that to be your final destination. And that's the beauty, again, when you're in relationship with God, is that he reminds you about why you can't limit, you know,
Yes.
what purpose he has for your life. Don't limit your life. Don't feel like you have to follow the worldly script that I grow up, I go to school, I get my degree, I get a job, I work it all these years, I retire, and then one day I die, and then that's it.
That's it.
Did he
Yeah.
just create us just for that purpose? Do you think that he would have spent the time pouring into us, imparting in us gifts and talents and skills and things of that nature, just for you to just do those basic things? I mean, life goes just like that, and we don't even to that. You know, we were talking about earlier about our 20s. I can feel like 20s was just yesterday,
It
and
does.
now it's like, where did that go? It felt
And
like
my brother
20
lets me
skipped the 30s and it skipped the 40s. It just
go.
what happened?
It,
You know, we
it
think about our
goes.
kids, and I remember, like, I think about your daughter, and I can
Yeah.
remember when
When she
your
was,
daughter and my daughter were little
yeah,
people. Now they
yeah,
got the nerve to be growing
close.
up, and
Yes.
you like, and you start to quit. Where's all this time going? And
Yes.
so again, we don't really have a long time, which is why it's so important for us to make the most of that. But a lot of our ability to make the most of our lives, even in the midst of all of the challenges and stuff that come along the way, is in that relationship with God. He allows us to enjoy the ride. He
Yeah.
allows us to experience it all and become, again, better versions of ourselves. And as a result, in doing so, he can use us for his glory. He can use us in mighty ways to not only be blessed, but to be a blessing to other people. So
Absolutely.
it's definitely something that's worth your investment of time and energy. And again, it's just a process. And will you fall short from time to time? Yes, we all do. We make mistakes, we slip up, we have setbacks or what have you, but he's always there. He's always, you know, loving you as only he can, and reminding you that, look, as you said earlier, I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. Just get up and keep moving. Just get up, dust you off, and keep going. We're gonna get this thing done. So,
And I
right.
love that you said that he uses our things to help other people. Like this right here, this whole thing this is not my jam. I'm used to being on your side. I'm used
Mm-hmm.
to being the one asking the questions and doing the things. So to be over here is very uncomfortable. But from the moment you asked me, not one time did I think I'm not going to do it or I shouldn't do it. Now I did think, oh, I don't want to do that. I'm going to be exposed. And then I was, with lots of conversations and encouragement from my daughter, and then hearing from him saying, no, this is part of the platform that you need to help someone. This is going to help someone. So you really don't get a say. You go sit down and I'll take over.
Mm-hmm.
And so here we are. Here we
Awesome.
are.
Awesome. Love that.
So thank
Love
you
that.
for having the vehicle for this to take place. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is great. And this is what it's about. We're just,
Mm-hmm.
you know, as I jokingly, you know, said to you earlier, as I do to my other guests, you know, this is not this whole shock TV moment. This is not, you know, the
Yeah.
Jerry Springer hour or anything like that. We're genuinely just trying to be transparent and authentic, and acknowledging the fact that we all go through stuff,
It's hard.
and everybody has their moments of hurt and struggle and challenge and things of that nature. It's a part of life. It's a part of what we do, but you don't have to be defined, you know, by your challenges and your struggles. They don't have to keep you down to where there's no way for you to have breakthroughs and overcome those moments. I mean, they're just a part of it's just a part of the journey.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So good stuff. Good stuff. So, Ricky, if you had an opportunity to sit across from the younger Ricky, that young country girl that came up trying to make her way, figure life out, becomes a mom at a young age, wasn't sure how all of this was going to play out and things of that nature. If you could speak to her and offer up some words of encouragement, some words of advisement that you feel the younger Ricky would have greatly benefited from, and it might have been essential for her to be able to navigate the challenges of life a little bit smoother, a little bit better, had she known certain things that you know now.
Mm-hmm.
Or just even the fact that there might be somebody that's tuning in that they're going through some similar struggles or some challenges that you spoke of, or just they just don't know in general how to deal with adversity in a healthy and productive way. What would be your words of encouragement and advisement in regards to a better approach, a better way to do it?
So I know a lot of the times, little Ricky, and that's what they call me because my dad was Big Ricky. His name is
Hmm.
Ricky, and I'm Ricky the girl. So I would definitely tell little Ricky to remember that she is not alone, and she is not doing any of this in her strength. I think that is the one thing that when I really was able to walk in, that yeah, I'm making these decisions and I'm the one doing it, but I'm not doing it in my strength. If I had have gotten that earlier, Joe, it would have alleviated so much anxiety for me. I would have been able to really calm down and enjoy the ride the way that I enjoy it now. It took a long time for me to realize that even though I am decision making, I am not the decision maker.
Mm.
Yes. So I would definitely tell her that she's not alone and to calm down. God got it. And then to everyone else, as I always say, look, we're all going from exhausted to exalted. Absolutely. Get a therapist.
Mm.
Mental health it's a thing. And especially in our community, black and brown communities, we do not give the attention to mental health as we should. So I encourage everyone to get a therapist. You need someone that can be non-judgmental, that you can go in and say exactly what you need to say, however you need to say, however it comes out, and not worry about being offensive or if you're going to hurt their feelings. We all have people in our lives that we talk to, but even the closest person to us, there's still things that we don't say because we don't want to hurt their feelings or for whatever reason. But when you're in therapy, you don't have it removes all of those boundaries and limitations. Everyone should have a therapist on speed dial, including therapists.
Mm. Wow.
Absolutely.
Love
Yes.
that. Love
Yes.
that. And I'll double down on that and saying, that therapists, having a therapist is definitely something that is worth your time and your energy. I used to be a person that was kind of like many, especially from my era in time, where, growing up, you know,
Mhm.
the conversation of therapy was, that was supposed to be for crazy people. That was supposed to
Yes.
be
Yeah.
foolishness and nonsense to sit there
Mm-hmm.
and talk about your feelings to
Yep.
somebody
Go pray about it. Go
and
tell
all
Jesus.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you mentioned that because
Yeah.
even in Christian circles, a lot
Yes.
of times we're discouraged from going that route because it's sometimes it's looked at as sort of a lack of faith
Right.
in going to God. And what I learned, and I know you actually do the same thing right now, is that it's okay to marry the two, where you have a
Ooh,
therapist who
yeah.
happens to be speaking to you from a Christian perspective,
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't want a therapist. When I finally did walk down that path, I was able to find a male therapist who looked like me. And
Yeah.
oh, by the way, he was rooted in Christ. He had a relationship with
Absolutely.
God.
Yep.
So I knew that he wasn't just giving me textbook answers
Mm-hmm.
when he was dealing with me. He was speaking to me. He not anything against the educational component because you need
Right.
that, but he
Yeah.
was also blending in the godly aspect to it as
Yes.
well, which allowed me to not only feel more open in how I express myself, but in the response that he was giving me, I feel like God was using him to speak to me in
Absolutely.
that manner. And you do a similar, for those who don't know, I know you do Christian based
Yes,
counseling.
sir. And
And
shout
so,
out to Pastor Sledge because he was my supervisor.
mm,
And he taught me how to marry the two beautifully.
mm,
He was very articulate in showing me how, hey, you can give homework assignments from the word. He was so patient and he was the best supervisor ever. So shout out, Pastor. Um, yes, I love to have Christians in my chair, because then when I am speaking to them, and that's one of the reasons I started Sagacity, because I was tired of having to hide and not
Mm-hmm.
say and rephrase it. But in my own practice, I get to have Christians and we speak openly about what God said. I use scripture as their replacement thoughts, as homework assignments. We have books that we read. It is so wonderful to be able to incorporate God in our mental health, because He made it.
Mm-hmm.
He made it. He knows all about it. He organized and constructed this thing. So I love that I am able to do that. It is such a blessing.
Yeah, and it's always beautiful when you can operate in that mode. I remember one day we were at our Ironman
Hmm.
meeting, and this is probably about a month or so ago, and uh, Elder Bowles was present at that particular session, and before we got started, he was asking me questions about the podcast, and he was allowing the other gentlemen to inquire and find out more information about how I do what I do and everything. And one of the things that I made mention to him that kind of aligns with what you said, what I love about doing my podcast and the basis in which I do it in, I said to him specifically, I said, my podcast in its own way allows me an opportunity to evangelize to people
Yes.
and through the telling of stories,
Hmm.
the sharing of stories from my guests and things that I contribute. It allows me to evangelize, but to do it in an alternate way, because I know that when we think about traditional evangelizing, I've never, in all honesty, just being transparent, I've never been a big fan of the whole,
Going out.
going
Yes.
out and knocking on the doors, and saying, "Hey, do you know Jesus?" or whatever. But this
Yes.
is an alternative way to do that. Even when you spoke about earlier about having an education background, I
Hmm.
also have a degree in education, a master's degree in
Hmm.
education. But it's like, but I never necessarily envision myself per se being in a classroom.
Right.
Even though I like to teach, I like to
Yeah.
coach. I never pictured myself in being in the formal structure of a classroom setting, or even when I think about, like I said, evangelizing or serving in any type of spiritual capacity, I never saw myself per se standing up behind a podium and pastoring a church, but I knew that God had placed a calling on my life to minister to people. And
Yeah.
so it's a thing where in that relationship with him, he can reveal and open up ways, other creative alternative ways where you can have the same impact, if not a greater impact, but just doing it in the midst of your design gift and your level of expertise, if you will, to give people a creative outlet to experience God through you. So in your case, through your counseling, in my case, through a podcast, or through
Yes.
my book, or
Hmm.
through books that you've gotten connected with, or what have you. I mean, there's so many ways. There's not a one-stop shop as far as an only way to do it. It's about the foundational basis of God being in the mix of it. So that's why I love when you talk about your counseling. We just spoke about right now about the beauty in you being able to marry the two, the
Yes.
counseling experience, but also the God experience in it, because I think the two of them are necessary. And especially as we discuss the subject matter of overcoming adversities and challenges, because I'm sure everybody that you're talking to, they're dealing with some kind of adversity or challenge that they haven't figured out how to process or work through. So what better advisement that you can reference but God himself to help somebody overcome
Yes.
challenges and problems versus only being limited to worldly options. you
Cast your
know
cares. He's
yes.
cast your cares. Cast all of your cares.
Absolutely. This is awesome. So Ricky, it has been a great pleasure talking to you, learning another layer of you and your journey. I mean, even of all these years that I've known you, haven't had a chance to have this type of conversation with you. And
Yeah.
so being able to have that and learn more about you, it's definitely gave me a broad, not only a broader perspective of you and who you are and what makes you be the person that you are, but
Yeah.
just another layer of respect and admiration that was already there about you and the woman of God that you represent yourself as being in the most authentic and genuine way. I mean, anybody, for my listeners, if you know Ricky, like I know Ricky, what you see is what you get. She's like she said earlier at the top of the broadcast. I'm just a country girl. That's who I am. That's what I am.
Yes.
But she's is more than just the quote unquote country girl. I mean, she's just a genuine, authentic person, one of the nicest people you could ever want to meet. And this is just an opportunity to learn more about you and experience you. And I'm just so thankful that you took the opportunity to be a part of this experience with me, not only for being a blessing to me, but of course being a blessing to my listeners and sharing your story. So I truly do appreciate that.
Yeah, and I thank
Um,
you so much for having me and giving me the opportunity to speak my truth and
Absolutely.
give my testimony. And I pray that it helps someone.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I have no doubt that it will. It will definitely be a blessing and be of help to somebody. But before I let you go, as is customary here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, I definitely want to take an opportunity to love on you, to celebrate you, to acknowledge you. So if you got anything that's, again, whether it be personally, professionally, or both, that's going on right now that you'd like to share with us, accomplishments, things happening now or coming down the pipe, please do share that, because again, we want to lift you up and acknowledge that and celebrate that. So what should we be looking forward to is going on with Ricky? What that we need to know about or celebrate?
Okay, well, I would first like to invite everyone to come out to Beyond the Stigma. It is an event in Canton, Texas. It is August the 3rd. It's a Saturday. And Beyond the Stigma is about, we will be highlighting suicide prevention and things steps you can take, and then how to deal with it after someone has died by suicide.
Mm,
So if you're not aware, for the men, that is one of the highest. You guys are the ones that die by suicide the most. So one of my clients, my old clients, is having an event. She has a storefront that she will have her grand opening. There will be therapists and mental health doctors there to kind of guide people through what they need to do, where to go. So I'm asking that everybody, if you get a chance to come out to this event, things will be on my website, my Facebook page, about it. So, if I can I send you a flyer
sure.
to, yes, okay.
Sure, you can send me a flyer, and also too. I know you made mention about your website and Facebook page. How do people? What is that address that people can connect with and check out?
So for me, my email address is Ricci Criner at Sagacity Counseling LLC.onmicrosoft.com. And you can Google me on Facebook. That's the easiest way to find me, because I don't have an official website, but all of my stuff is on Facebook. Yeah.
And for people who don't know how to spell sagacity, would you please spell that for them?
Yes, it's Sagacity.
All right.
Again, it's Sagacity, and it means wisdom. It's a word from the Bible. It means wisdom.
Awesome.
So
Love
yes,
that.
I picked that Sagacity Counseling. So just really quickly, I started my work in the prison system with men, and I learned to speak man really well. And that was where God has blessed me tremendously. So this whole cause of suicide prevention and then how to manage after the fact is very impactful, and it's dear to my heart, because men have a lot that they bear. They have a lot on their shoulders. And going back to not knowing how to deal with it, not knowing how to manage, I think that this event is going to be a big blessing to the community that it's serving, which is East Texas. That's my home, yay. So I'm looking forward to it.
That's awesome.
Other than that, I am accepting new clients. I do marriage and family, individual. My specialty is addiction. I'm a licensed professional counselor and a licensed chemical dependency counselor. So my specialty is addiction of all kind, whether we're talking about shopping, food, or substances, anxiety, depression, autism, all of the things that people struggle with the most. I've been doing this for 14 years, so it is my pleasure to be a servant of the Lord.
That's
Thank you for
beautiful.
letting me share. Thank you
That
so
is
much for
beautiful.
letting me share.
And would the contact information still be the same if somebody's interested
Yes,
in your counseling services as well?
yes,
Great.
absolutely.
Awesome.
Yes.
So to my audience, there you have it. You have the information on how to contact Ricky if you need any of her services, or if you know somebody
Mhm.
who might be in need of her services. Please do refer them accordingly to her. As you can see, she is, again, coming from a genuine and authentic place. She's passionate about what she's doing, and she's, more importantly, she's operating in the purpose that God has for her. He's gifted her accordingly to do this work. She wants to and has a desire to pour into those of us who are in need of doing a better job with our mental health, if you will. So men or women, doesn't matter. She's making herself available. So please do take advantage of that, because, again, we get into the subject of mental health, and I know that's another conversation for another day, but it's so important. And if we don't, give it the level of importance and attention that that it calls for, it can cause some irreparable, damages to us,
Absolutely.
mentally, emotionally, and unfortunately, physically in some instances, as you already heard her speak to, just particularly like with men in the area of suicide and things of that
Mhm.
nature. People are dying from not giving proper attention to mental health. We used to think that it was just important to keep our bodies intact in terms of, eating the right things and exercise. And again, those things are important too, but it's something about the mind that when that's
Yeah,
off kilter, to me, and Ricky, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but if the mind is not right,
absolutely.
everything else is out of sync.
Yeah,
You're not gonna be, of the right mindset, of the right focus, of the right direction.
absolutely.
When you don't have clarity here, when you don't have peace of mind, when you're stressing all the time and worrying, but even bigger than that, there's the spiritual component as well,
Yes.
and that's why you kept, for my listeners, when you keep hearing us reference back to that relationship with God and why it's so critical, why it's so important. We're not just saying this because we're just super holy and we get it all right all the time or anything like that. We just understand
Yeah.
what that relationship with God has meant in our respective lives, and the difference between what it was like without him and what it's been like with him. And it's all the difference in the world. It makes life, the way we view it, the ups and the downs and everything in between, the way we view life, your whole perspective, your whole vantage point of it just completely transforms. It changes things. And as I shared earlier, you stop looking at storms as being negative events, but instead opportunities to grow and develop and become a better version of yourself. And so, uh, if you don't currently have a relationship with God, I'm here to tell you, and I'm sure, again, Ricky will co-sign on this. Today is a mighty fine day to make that
Yes,
decision.
sir.
And I'm here to tell you, it'll be the best decision that you ever make
Yes.
in life. So I definitely encourage you to do that. If by chance that has not been a decision that you have branched off into making up to this point in your life. So again, thank you so much for being on the show. Loved it, loved everything about it, for blessing me, for blessing my viewers. And for my viewers, if you've enjoyed our content today, what we've been talking about, the sharing of our stories, authentically, genuinely opening up, being vulnerable and transparent, please subscribe, please share, please like, please comment, because this is what the Blessings in the Streets podcast is all about.
Mhm.
Empowering, uplifting, encouraging, pouring into others, understanding that we all go through our storms and adversities, but we serve a God that is able to get us through it all. He's the ultimate problem solver, the ultimate way maker, the ultimate healer, infinite wisdom, infinite, unlimited availability to you, all access all the time, anytime you need him, day or night, night or day. He's always there for you. And so even as we go through our challenges of life and the storms, if you will, they don't have to be the end of your story. It's just a part of the journey. But with God, we can always get through those moments. We can withstand the hits that come with those storms, and we'll be able to get not only get through them, but come up out of them stronger and better and wiser than what we were beforehand, and still standing upright in the process. So, what more can you ask for in a situation like that? So, with that said, remember, here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, you keep fighting that good fight, keep leaning into God, allowing Him to be your eyes and ears to navigate you through this journey that we call life, the storms of life that come along with it, trusting in Him, operating in faith and obedience, and knowing that He will not lead you astray. He will not lead you down a path of destruction. Everything that He does is with a purpose and is perfected already. The victory is already in store. All you have to do is let him lead the way, and you won't regret the outcome. You will not only experience the opportunity to be blessed, but also to be a blessing to other people. So until next time, you take care of yourselves. I look forward to seeing you again on our next show. And just may God's covering continue to be over your life, as he loves us all so much unconditionally. Take care, and I look forward to seeing you again.